Hello and welcome back to Nature Time with Nicole and Julia. I'm Julia. Today we're sitting here in my garden so we can talk about pollinator pathways. Pollinator Pathways is an initiative to create a corridor of connecting habitats and food sources for pollinators throughout our region. Now those pollinators are things such as bees, butterflies, hummingbirds, and also other insects, birds, and wildlife. Our native pollinators evolved on our native plants, and so these native plants are really a critical source for our pollinators. And as we think about the ever more fragmenting landscape and our changing climate, everything we can do to help these pollinators along is really critical, both for our natural ecosystems, but also for our food systems. And luckily, there's a lot that we can do in our own backyards. So our gardens are one of the key places where we can create habitat for pollinators. First, thinking about the composition of your garden and what sort of plants you have there can be really critical. We can think about making sure we increase the amount of native plants within our garden, and also thinking about the time at which those plants flower. So having flowers throughout the growing season could be really important for a lot of different pollinators. We can also think about having a diversity of types of plants. So it's not just the flowers that are important for pollinators, but native shrubs and native trees can also provide really important habitats for those pollinators. Additionally, thinking about plants that provide food, but also that provide that habitat in a way of, where an insect might lay its eggs, or where a bird can hide within the foliage, could be really important as well. And luckily, there's a lot of really great resources out there. If you're looking to add native plants to your garden, you can go to pollinator-pathways.org for a list of websites that provide great information on native plants for different environments. If you're talking sun versus shade versus wet soils and dry soils, they have a lot of great resources on that. In addition to the plants in our garden, we can also think about making sure we have a clean water source for pollinators. And that clean water source can be something like a bird bath, like you might find in a hardware store, or even just creating a puddle, which is something that butterflies will use as a shallow puddle. Additionally, having clear dirt patches and piles of woody debris like sticks and other things can be really useful for these pollinators. And then one thing that I haven't talked about is thinking about our lawns. So you can see on the left side of me here, I've got a lot of lawn in my backyard. And there's a couple of things that I could think about in terms of my lawn. First, we could think about expanding the garden and reducing the amount of lawn space and planting some native plants where I previously just had grass. I could also think about reducing the number of times that I mow, or I could think about making sure that I leave the lawn clippings there as some habitat for pollinators. In the October, November, when the leaves start to fall, rather than raking the leaves, I could leave them there. That provides overwintering habitat for our pollinators. And then when the leaves decompose, they also return nutrients to the soil. And then lastly, we could think about reducing the amount of fertilizer that gets used on lawns. So you could think about stopping altogether or using an organic slow release fertilizer. So these are just a few options of things you can do to help out the pollinators in your backyard. I hope you've learned a little bit. If you're looking to get involved, there's a couple of groups locally that can help out. The Phillipstown Garden Club is working on a Pollinator Pathways initiative, along with the Putnam Valley CCE and the Cornell Cooperative Extension. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.